It was a dark and stormy night when Ethan and his friends, Anna, Mark, and Sarah, arrived at Blackwood Mansion. The place had been abandoned for decades, and local legends painted it as a cursed house. The mansion, perched on a desolate hill, seemed to mock the heavy storm with its imposing silhouette. The wind howled around them as they parked their car in front of the mansion, its windows dark, its facade cracked and decaying. "You sure about this, Ethan?" Mark asked, eyeing the mansion with uncertainty. "Why not?" "We're here for an adventure. Besides, it's just a bunch of old stories," Ethan replied, trying to sound confident. Anna and Sarah exchanged uneasy glances but followed him up the steps. As they reached the front door, Ethan pushed it open with a loud creak. The musty air rushed out to greet them, thick with dust and neglect. Inside, the house was dark, cold, and silent, save for the occasional sound of dripping water from a leaky roof. The group set up their equipment, cameras, flashlights, and notebooks, each eager to document their ghost hunt. Little did they know, the house had been waiting for them. The deeper they ventured into the house, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It wasn't just the coldness in the air. It was the feeling of being watched, an invisible presence that seemed to follow their every move. As they walked through the dusty hallways, strange sounds echoed, a door creaking open, the faintest whisper of footsteps behind them. "You hear that?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It's just the wind," Anna replied, though even she sounded unsure. They moved further into the house, into a large room with tall, grimy windows. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. A sense of dread filled the air, making it hard to breathe. "What the hell?" Mark muttered, fumbling with his flashlight. Before anyone could speak, a cold gust of wind blew through the room, rattling the old windows. Then they all froze. From the darkness came a low, guttural whisper, so faint they could barely make it out. "Leave now." Everyone turned, but there was no one there. The room had grown eerily silent again. "It's probably just an old house," Ethan said, his voice trembling slightly. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Determined to shake off the unease, Ethan suggested they explore the basement. The group reluctantly agreed, but as they descended the narrow staircase, an unsettling coldness wrapped around them. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the darkness felt almost suffocating. "This is where most of the activity happens," Ethan said, shining his flashlight around the stone walls. "I don't know, man," Mark muttered. "Something's not right down here." The basement seemed endless, with cobwebs and debris scattered across the floor. As they moved further, Sarah spotted something strange on the wall. Scratches, deep gouges, as though something had tried to claw its way out. Her heart raced. She pointed them out to the group. "Is that blood?" Anna asked, her voice cracking. Ethan stepped closer. "It's dried. Whatever did this is long gone." But no sooner had he said it, the basement door slammed shut behind them. The heavy wooden door rattled with the force of the slam, and they were trapped. "Let's get out of here," Sarah yelled, but the door wouldn't budge. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the wall. They turned in unison, but there was nothing there. The temperature dropped even further, and an overwhelming sense of dread crept in. Ethan tried the door again, his heart pounding in his chest. And then they heard it, a faint, distorted voice, like nails scraping against glass. "You cannot leave." The group panicked, rushing towards the walls, frantically looking for an escape. Mark's flashlight flickered out. Sarah screamed. From the corner of the room, a figure materialized, a tall, black-clad silhouette, its face obscured by shadows. Who are you?" Ethan stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it began to move, slowly, deliberately, its presence suffocating. It reached out with long, skeletal fingers, and Mark, caught in a paralyzing fear, froze in place. The entity grinned, its mouth stretching unnaturally wide. With a terrifying speed, it grabbed Mark by the throat, lifting him off the ground. He gasped for air, clawing at the invisible force holding him. "Mark!" Sarah screamed. Ethan lunged at the figure, pulling Mark free. The entity hissed in. They ran back upstairs, slamming the door to the living room behind them. Hearts racing, they tried to make sense of what had just happened. Mark was breathing heavily but alive, though visibly shaken. "We need to get out of here," Anna said urgently. But Ethan, determined to uncover the truth, pulled out an old book he had found in the study earlier. "Before we leave, let's figure out what's going on," he said, flipping through the pages. The mansion's history was darker than any of them could have imagined. The Blackwood family, owners of the house, were known for their wealth and power, but they were also involved in dark rituals, summoning demons in exchange for even more power. The head of the family, Charles Blackwood, had made a pact with a demon, and the price had been steep, his soul and the souls of his descendants. The mansion, cursed by this pact, had become a prison for the souls trapped inside. Ethan read aloud, "Any who dare enter the mansion will become part of the curse, drawn into the world of the dead, and never allowed to leave." Realization hit them like a wave. They were trapped, not just by the house, but by the very curse itself. As they gathered their things to make their escape, the house seemed to come alive. The walls groaned, the windows rattled, and the door to the living room slammed shut. There was no escape through the front. "Back to the basement," Ethan urged. "There's a hidden passage. I remember reading about it." They rushed back down the stairs, hearts pounding. As they reached the basement, they found the trap door beneath a dusty rug, just as Ethan had described. Without thinking twice, they pried it open and crawled through the narrow tunnel. It felt like hours before they finally emerged into the open air. The mansion loomed behind them, its dark silhouette watching them from the hill. The storm had cleared, but the air was thick with the remnants of fear. But as they turned to leave, they heard a final, chilling whisper in the wind. "You are not free." The next day, they tried to return to normal life, but the nightmares continued. Mark couldn't sleep without seeing the glowing red eyes of the entity, watching him from the shadows. Sarah kept hearing the voice whispering to her, urging her to return. And Anna began to draw strange symbols in her notebook, symbols she didn't remember seeing before. Ethan, however, had the worst experience. One night, his phone rang. The number was unknown. Reluctantly, he answered. On the other end was only silence. Then a video began to play on its own. The footage was clear. It was the Blackwood mansion, exactly as they had left it. But there, standing in front of the door, was the entity, grinning directly at the camera. "Leave, or suffer," it whispered before the video cut off. The group was never the same after Blackwood Mansion. The curse had followed them. The horrors they had experienced were not over. They had only just begun. Blackwood Mansion had claimed its victims, and its reach extended far beyond the walls of the house. Now they were part of the mansion's dark history, forever bound to its haunted legacy.